I'm now joined by Bob Henson from Denver. He blogs about weather and climate. Bob, thank you for joining us on Sunday.
Thank you.
I want to begin by asking you about the scope of this disaster. The U.S. Weather Service called Harvey unprecedented. Some experts say it is a once-in-a-500-year flood. Do you agree? Help us understand the scope and scale here.
Oh, absolutely. Now, those are measured based on particular locations. So, for example, a station in the city of Houston might be keeping records for a few decades. And by extending those records statistically, you can estimate that a certain flood might be a 1-in-100-year flood or 1-in-500-year. So for certain locations in the Houston area, this is by far a 1-in-500-year flood. And what's especially striking and troublesome about this flood is it's covering a very large area across the whole Houston city and the region, in fact. So it's a combination of the intensity of the flooding and the size of the flooding, plus how long the flooding is going to persist. And all these are almost off the charts.
Well, on the relief efforts, there were lots of criticism back a decade ago about former President George Bush's response to Hurricane Katrina. Now, President Trump said there was great coordination between agencies at all levels of government. He will go there as soon as possible as things settle down so that he will not cause disruption. What do you think of the U.S. government's response to Hurricane Harvey this time around?
Well, in this case, the disaster is still unfolding, so we're going to have to wait and see what is done. I'm hopeful that federal capacity for rebuilding and helping out will be in place when it needs to be. One thing I would like to see happen, the National Flood Insurance Program is about to expire. It needs to be reauthorized every 2 years, or every few years, and as of now, it's going to expire at the end of September, and there's going to have to be some rapid action to get that in place because that insures millions and millions of Americans against flooding. And in many cases, people can't get private flood insurance. They're limited to this federal option.
So what are the biggest challenges facing locals rebuilding their homes and, more importantly, their lives?
Well, Houston is going to be in a big mess for a number of days to come, and it may be several days before many people will even be able to leave their houses. So we have an immediate problem, not unlike Katrina, where people are trapped in their houses and possibly for days. So I'm really worried about that immediate problem. Beyond that, Houston is located in a terrible position for flooding. The city has had 300-year floods in the last 10 years. And the city continues to expand and build out toward the northwest away from the coast. The problem is that's exactly the direction where rainwater flows from. In other words, if it rains northwest of the city over this newly developed land, that water is going to flow from the concrete more easily, flow right into the city. So as the city continues to grow, it just becomes more and more flood vulnerable. And I think there's going to have to be a really concerted effort, probably with local, state, and federal officials to get Houston more prepared for future floods, which in a warming world, more moisture in the atmosphere, we're liable to see more risk of floods of this magnitude.
Certainly lots of challenges on the ground. Thank you so much, Bob Henson from Denver.